May 7th, 2025 is around the corner. And did you know that by May 7th, 2025, more than 50% of American travelers could be turned away at the airport without a real ID? This new travel requirement is a game changer for how we identify ourselves when flying or accessing federal facilities. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Travel Vet, where we will discuss an important aspect of domestic travel in the United States, the Real ID. Understanding what the Real ID is, its implications for travel, and how to obtain one can make your travel experience smoother. Let's dive right in. The Real ID is a form of identification that was created in response to the 9/11 Commission's recommendation to enhance security measures for federal identification. The Real ID Act, enacted in 2005, sets minimum security standards for state-issued driver's licenses and identification cards. Once you have a Real ID, it means that your identification meets these security standards, which helps ensure that the person presenting the ID is who they claim to be. The Real ID is distinguished by a star symbol in the upper right corner of the card. Beginning from May 7th, 2025, all travelers will need to present a Real ID-compliant form of identification, or an acceptable alternative, to board domestic flights or access certain federal facilities. As of now, all 50 states, along with the District of Columbia and U.S. territories, have been working toward implementing Real ID-compliant licenses, but requirements can vary. Currently, 18 states and territories require residents to obtain a Real ID if they want to use their state-issued ID for boarding flights or entering secure government facilities. You can find a comprehensive list of states and territories that have fully implemented the Real ID program on the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's website. So, what happens if you don't have a Real ID? If you attempt to board a domestic flight without a Real ID after the deadline, you will be required to present an alternative form of identification. Acceptable forms include a U.S. passport or passport card, a military ID, and any other state-issued ID that is not Real ID compliant, along with additional security measures, which may include extra screening. It's important to note that without proper identification, you may not be allowed to fly, which can lead to significant travel disruptions, missed flights, and additional costs. When it comes to cruising, the requirements can vary depending on the cruise line and ports of call. Generally, many cruise lines do not specifically require a Real ID. However, it is crucial to have an acceptable form of identification, especially when traveling to or from U.S. territories or foreign destinations. If you do not have a Real ID, you can use several other forms of identification for travel, especially for air travel. First, a U.S. passport. A passport is acceptable for all travel, including international flights. Second, a U.S. military ID. Active military personnel and their dependents can use military IDs for travel. Third, state-issued IDs. Some states may offer non-compliant IDs for other purposes, but they may lead to additional screening at security checkpoints. Applying for a Real ID typically involves several steps. First, gather required documents. You will need to provide proof of identity, such as a birth certificate or passport, proof of social security number, and proof of residency. Next, visit your state's DMV. You cannot apply for Real ID online in most states. You must go to your local Department of Motor Vehicles or DMV. Fill out the application. Complete the application form, which is usually available online or at the DMV. Then, payment. Pay any fees associated with obtaining the Real ID, which can vary by state. The time it takes to get your Real ID varies, but most people receive their new IDs in the mail within 2 to 4 weeks after their appointment, depending on the state. Let's discuss some of the pros and cons of obtaining a Real ID. Pros. First, easier travel. A Real ID meets federal requirements and simplifies the boarding process at airports. Second, enhanced security. Real IDs are part of a national effort to enhance security and reduce fraud. Third, long-lasting documentation. Having a Real ID can provide a reliable form of identification for various purposes beyond just travel. Cons. First, obtaining one can be inconvenient. The application process may require an in-person visit and gathering various documents. Second, costs. There can be fees associated with obtaining a real ID, which vary by state. Third, limited use outside security contexts. Although it meets federal standards, it might not be necessary for many everyday purposes, thereby potentially leading to confusion among some residents. In conclusion, obtaining a real ID is becoming increasingly important for domestic travel in the United States. Starting May 7, 2025, it will be a requirement for boarding flights and accessing federal facilities. Whether you're planning to fly, engage with government services, or board a cruise, understanding these requirements can save you from delays and inconveniences. Now, I encourage you all to take action. Check your state's guidelines regarding real IDs, gather your documents, and apply for a real ID if you need one. Don't wait until the last minute. Prepare now to ensure your travel experience is seamless and enjoyable. If you found this video informative, please don't forget to like and subscribe for more informative videos about travel. Thank you for joining me today, and safe travels.